Do you want to work days? Do you want to work nights? Do you want to, you know what I'm saying? Do you want to work full time? Do you want to work part time? You figure that shit out first.
So, so about like the things to consider because a lot of people don't even know what to consider. You know,
Right. The
like
things
we'll
that are
about schedule. We'll talk about um, type of hospital, academic versus private.
right, right. Do you want to do hospital versus outpatient? Do you want to mix of both? You know, want to work for a private hospital versus the VA? I mean, there's so many things, and also area, location. Where do you want to be?
Right.
Small town versus big city, because those contracts are completely different too. Yeah. So I mean, we can freely talk. We have so much to say about it. You know.
Hi, I'm Dr. Siri.
I'm Dr. Ava, and we are sisters in medicine.
Today, we wanted to talk to you all about the job search and the job interview. We want to give you all tips about things that you should consider when you are looking for your first job out of residency. So, Dr. Ava, what is one tip you would have for someone looking for their first job coming out of residency?
I just think that coming out of residency, it's a very, very important milestone. At this point, you are done being told what to do. You're about to just be in the real world, yourself making your own decisions. So you need to decide what you want your life to be like after residency and maybe forever. So my recommendation would be you need to write down the different things that are important to you, such as the type of job you want to have. Do you want to work days or do you want to work nights? Do you want to do hospital medicine versus outpatient medicine versus a combination of both? Do you want to work full time? Do you want to work part time? Those are the things you need to consider first and foremost before even looking. Because if you start looking, you're going to be very overwhelmed. But if you kind of narrow it down to saying, for example, I want a mix of outpatient and inpatient, then you know these are the jobs you need to start looking for. There's other things to consider as well. Dr. Siri, tell us what else you think we need to consider.
Like you said, once you consider what type of schedule you want and whether you want to be inpatient or outpatient, the next thing to think about is what type of place you want to work at. Do you want to work at an academic center, like where you probably trained for residency? Or do you want to work in a private sector? Or do you want to work somewhere like a VA medical center, which is a different beast all its own? And for those of you who don't know, what a VA medical center is. It's a Veterans Affairs Medical Center. So it's a hospital that caters to veterans. Those are some things to consider in terms of the differences between academic versus private versus a VA. There's tons of differences. So in academic medicine, a lot of times you don't make as much money as you would make in a private sector. And my theory is that teachers always make less money, and doctors that work in academic centers are essentially teachers who are practicing medicine while teaching residents. So they make less money. They usually don't have sign on bonuses for those positions at all. Whereas in the private sector, you'll get sign on incentives, you'll get student loan repayment incentives, you'll get a nice big salary. And the VA medical centers all are very different depending on the state you go to. So that's what I would say. Do you have anything else to add about the different types of places?
Just that the reason also that in academic medicine, the doctors are teachers, they're teaching, like you said, but the reason why they also make less money is also a less stressful environment as well.
You
You
think?
know, you're teaching and you are not having to do everything that the resident is doing. And so, because it's less stressful, they make a little less, you know. You supervise the residents, that's essentially your job.
What are your thoughts about picking a location? Like what?
I I think that's very, very important. That's also very key in trying to decide what you want to do, where you want to go, and the kind of life you want to live. Some people like living in the middle of a city, a very busy city, and some people like to be in a more rural area outside of the city, sometimes very, very far away from the city. That's also very important. That's two different lifestyles altogether. The money there is also different because usually the further you are away from a busy town and or the city, the more money you usually get. Also, you also have other opportunities that you don't get when you're in the city, such as loan repayment. A lot of times you get loan repayment when you're outside. You get bigger bonuses when you're further away. And the reason being is because they're trying to attract more doctors to go to those areas because those are small towns that don't really attract a lot of people. And so they want to give you more incentives to make you want to come there. But is that the life you want? Do you want more money, more sign on bonuses, and be in a small town? Or do you want to live your life and be in a city? It all depends on the person that you are and the type of life you want to live. So those are the things you need to write down on a piece of paper, and that's also very important in trying to decide where or what kind of job you want.
The other thing to consider, and this is always a question to ask when you are, looking for jobs or talking to recruiters, is who is running the group you're in. So for Dr. Ava and I, we're internal medicine doctors and hospitalist doctors. So we would be working for a hospital, and well, we would essentially be working for the hospital, but depending on the hospital, that hospital may say, we want this physician group to staff our hospital. So you may actually be employed by a group and not necessarily by the hospital. So there's a middleman there. So you would have to decide if you wanted to go to a hospital that employs their own employees or hospitalists, or if you want to go with a hospital that is contracting another group to work with their hospitalists. And I don't know what your thoughts are about that. I don't have experiences in either of those cases. Do you have experience in either of those cases?
I do. And I don't know if that is, I mean, it does make a difference, but I think that's probably at the bottom of the list.
Okay.
Um, because essentially, you still, once you decide where you want to live, the type of schedule you want to have, and everything else we already talked about, if you want to be an academic versus private versus, once you decide that, then at the bottom of the list you can decide if you want to work for a hospital versus working for a group that's hired by the hospital. Essentially, you still end up in the hospital that you want, in the city that you want, in the setting that you want. So I think that's really at the bottom of the list, because working for the hospital or a group, it's probably about the same thing.
Okay. I'm on my job search now, and I ended up kind of saying no to places that were staffed by groups just because I was hearing different things from people, and they were saying that it's better to be employed by a hospital, but I don't know. So we'll see. You say it doesn't make a difference. Some people say,
Does. I mean, I've done both. I think the most important is the first three things we talked about.
okay,
So if you decide number one, number two, number three, you already know you made your decision where you want to live, the setting, the schedule, all of that. And the hospital that you end up picking has been staffed by a group. I think that's okay if everything else. Ultimately, you just want to try and be 100% um, at your goal, but I don't know if 100% is attainable. There's still going to be some pros and cons when you make your decision. And so that's why I think you need to write everything down, the pros and the cons, what you really want. And then once you start looking, you can decide, well, this job fits most of what I'm looking for, or almost everything I'm looking for. There's always going to be some things that you may not be 100% happy with, but as long as the majority of what you're looking for you can find, I think that's important.
let's fast forward. You figured out what jobs you want to apply for. You've applied for them and you've gotten a couple interviews. Okay. So, what is something that job applicants like myself should be doing in order to prepare for and rock their interviews?
First thing you need to do is work on your CV. Obviously, if you got the interview, I'm assuming you already worked on your CV and they asked you for your CV and you give it to them. But you still need to know everything you have on your CV, because best believe they will ask you about the different things you've done that's on your CV. So you need to have that down pat. Also, your dress code is very important, okay? You have to look professional, you have to look clean. You don't want to overdo it with the hair and the makeup and the outfits, you don't want to show too much. Maybe buy a suit that's very classy. First impressions matter a lot. Number three, once you interview at the hospital, before you go in, also do your research on the hospital, the staff, the CEO, because you want to come prepared to ask questions. You want to come showing everybody that you also did your research on the place, and that matters too. What else do you think we need to do to prepare?
One of the things for me that I did to prepare was I was ready to answer behavioral style questions. So you might get asked, describe a time when you made a medical error and how you dealt with it, or describe a time where you had to utilize your communication skills to resolve a conflict, things like that. And then the number one question that people always ask is, tell me about yourself. And I was doing some research about how to go about answering that question if I were asked that question, because you can't just say, oh, I'm from Chicago, I like the color purple, and I do YouTube videos. Like, you answer that question in a medical way, like kind of answer it to tie in why you're a good fit for the job you're going for. So for
Right.
talked about, how I was from Chicago, how I went to Northwestern University and I did lab work, blah, 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 and how I also worked in a salon and learned customer service skills, and then how I'm on the hospitalist track at MCV, which is leading me to apply for this hospitalist position. You know what I mean? So, like, talk about things that set you up to be a good candidate for that position. And I would say practice it so that you're not stumbling over your words, during the interview. So yeah, so those are some of the things I did. And then one question that they would love to hear your answer to a lot of times is, why that hospital? So if you can answer why that hospital in a way that makes them think, oh, this person really did their research and they really like what we have to offer. So we won't be wasting our time if we draft a contract and offer them a job. So
Right. That's important.
yeah. So that's the only thing that I would add. Now that you have rocked your interview and you have been sent a contract offer, we want to let you all know how to go about accepting the offer, like what you need to do to make sure you're accepting a good offer. But because this video is getting kind of long, we're going to move on to another video. So I guess that's all for this one. So we will see you in the next video.
See you next time.